Hello and good evening, everybody. Welcome back here to RaceSpot TV, and welcome back to the PCA Club class. This is the 7th and final round of this season, coming to you tonight from VIR. My name is Ron Mullins. Alongside me in the commentary booth is Jeremy Scott. Ramiro Augustine Cisneros is our producer for tonight's broadcast. For one final time here from this season, we are thrilled to have Princess Cruises as the 2025 PCA title sponsor, as the official cruise vacation partner of Series 14. They provide exclusive offers, including world-leading itineraries across a fleet of 17 elegant ships sailing to more than 330 global destinations. Reach out to the PCA concierge team to book your next adventure today by calling 833-679-2188. Well, Jeremy, it is champions time here in the PCA world. Just had the championship finale for the pro class last night here on RaceSpot, and now we have got a two-horse race for the club class. But to round off this season, well, it's been a fantastic schedule. We head off to a gem of a racetrack in the form of VIR.
Yeah, we really do, Ron. And of course, this really, with the way VIR set up, it's going to make passing a premium here with these 992. So it's going to be interesting to see how these drivers handle South End, Oak Tree, Roller Coaster, Hog Pen, especially going into Horseshoe. I'm excited to see how that turns out, especially on lap one.
Oh, lap one is going to be brutal for some of these racers, and that run down off into turn number one, we're definitely going to be talking about that throughout the entirety of this show. But here's the championship situation as we head off into the season finale. It is a two-horse race between Ryan Cowley and Kalen Heimbecker. The two of them have really been the tour de force throughout this season. Ryan Cowley has been dominant, scored a lot of wins thus far this season. 4 to be precise, and those 4 wins were back to back at Watkins Glen, Indianapolis, Laguna Seca, and Aragon. Zolder, last time out, saw Kellen Heimbecker finally break through for win number 1. However, it's still been the Ryan Cowley show. He holds on to a 110-point gap between himself and Heimbecker heading off into the season finale. Heard as well from our esteemed RaceSpot TV colleague, Mr. Jared Gregory, that he does have a shot to finish on the season podium if things go maybe awry for John Gibson. And do also want to say that Ryan Cowley does have a good shot to do well in the Clean Drivers Awards, because he's currently slotted second of those racers. Only 10 incident points throughout this entire season, which is really saying something, considering the likes of Spa, Watkins Glen, Indianapolis, and Laguna Seca are always brutal. You throw in hot temperatures in Indy, and that's a tough race. Aragon was in the wet, and Zolder was in the night. So really tough challenges for these racers, as we're currently in qualifying with Jake Gerbino jumping up to the provisional pole.
Yeah, I do remember doing Laguna Seca and how dominant Cowley was. Heimbecker tried to catch up to Cowley, but just couldn't do it. So it's no surprise that Cowley is up at the front. Mohamed Karasai is off the course, so he will set a 16th fastest time. Ryan Cowley across the line, third fastest, with a 4:27.745. So that will end his qualifying session. But yeah, look at the top. Cowley's really happy to see that fast time. Jake Gerbino, as you mentioned, up front alongside Mark Doran. But look at that, Ron. The gap between the 2.036. We see the classic Eddie Van Halen paint scheme on David Snelling as he goes for his flyer lap. He's got just about a minute left.
And as we see these drivers continue to run around this racetrack with only a few moments left to go in this qualifying session, want to underscore how topsy-turvy qualifying has been throughout the season. There has only been one driver to score multiple poles, that being your championship points leader, Ryan Cowley, who did it in back-to-back races at Indianapolis and Laguna Seca. Outside of that, Mark Doran was able to grab a pole at Spa. James Martin was able to grab a pole at Watkins Glen. Mike Madsen grabbed the pole at Aragon, and Landon Patmore, making his debut, if my memory serves me correctly, last time at Zolder, was able to grab the pole position there. Lots of challenges, though, as we head off into the 60-minute long race. These competitors cannot rest after doing a good performance in qualifying. They still got to bring the thunder in the race.
Yeah, of course, qualifying and racing, two separate things. Of course, at least in the race, you don't necessarily have as hard as you would for qualifying, but at the same time, you know, you can take qualifying and use it as practice for some sort of race. But checkered flag is out for this session, and you know, we've got a lot of fast drivers up the front.
Yeah, we've got some very quick racers, the usual standout stars from this series. And now that we have a little warm-up session, I think we're going to take a look at that starting grid in just a couple of moments time and let you know how the field will line up for the final race of this PCA Club Class season here in Series 14. And a reminder, folks, Series 15 is coming up soon, just in a couple of weeks. In fact, here on RaceBot, you'll be able to catch all of the action with some brand new race cars as well. The 992 GT3s going to be running there, and you'll be able to catch all that action, of course, here on RaceBot TV as we head off into a new series and new year of adventures. 2026 rapidly approaching here, and it's been a wonderful year in the PCA world. Been a pretty wild year for myself commentary wise. I think this is my 421st show that I've had thus far this year. Time flies when you are having fun. But now with the drivers hitting the track, I think we will take a look at that starting grid, run through your starters here in this race tonight, because we have got a pretty stacked grid full of competitors as we usually expect in this championship. And for the first time, we are going to have a new name, at least in the grand scheme of this season, leading the field to green.
So yeah, that's actually quite interesting. And Ramiro, I want you to keep that shot, not now. We'll keep that shot in the race because it's going to be story time with Jeremy sometime during this race, because as I was telling Ron off the air, I've got a pretty neat, hilarious even VIR story. But yeah, let's take a look at Jake Urbino, your pole replay, and we get to see how good this 47.622 is out of the 113. Now watch as he comes down into this first section of corners. He attacks that first apex just perfectly and executes it great. Now you're going to head into NASCAR corner, turn number 3. You got to get that banking right. You don't want to go off there because, Ron, as you know, it's going to set you up for turn 4 and turn 5 and into the S's.
Yeah, once you head your way off through the mid-sector of this racetrack, the speed begins to build, the tension begins to build as well. Keep an eye on those curbs. They may be sports cars, but they can bite and bite very hard. But as you head your way under the bridge into 7, 8, and 9, this fast section, building up the speed over the crest of the hill, is met with a pretty abrupt end as you head your way off through South Bend of turn number 10. Now, that turn's going to be super brutal. A lot of runoff area on the outside, but if you go off the track too much through there, you're going to get spat out onto the back straightaway, which is what happens when you head your way off Oak Tree. Sadly, the Oak Tree in question got struck by lightning many moons ago, but a very tricky corner leading onto a very important straightaway here. At the end of this straightaway, Jeremy, we have got a fantastic overtaking opportunity in the form of turn number 14, that being the roller coaster.
Oh, the roller coaster is so much fun, and you'll be wanting to strap in nice and tight for this ride going downhill. Now, some series, when they come here, they like to have a little charity races with Power Wheels or even soapbox cars, because you're going downhill so far, so fast. Now you set yourself up for hog pen. You have a choice. Do you go to pit road or do you go straight on the track? Jake Urbino decided to go straight down onto the track. And remember, start-finish is actually pushed further down the track than it was several years ago, and across the line for that 147 lap that set his pole time. As we said, we got warm-up going on and lots of times being put on, which is no surprise here with about 1:20 left. John Gibson, your fastest, with a 53.618. Not too far away, Jeremy Hall in the 060. Here's your grid.
Yeah, and for the first time this season, Jake Urbino gonna start from the pole. He becomes the 6th different driver to start a PCA Club race from the pole here in Series 14. Let's see if he'll become the 4th race winner. Mark Doran, who kicked the season off in style with a pole and win in round number 1 at Spa, will join him on the front row. Ryan Galley on track for a championship, has a championship rival right alongside with Kalen Heimbecker starting alongside him in 4th. John Gibson will start in P5. Next to him will be James Martin. Looking on row number 4, it's Steve Komatz alongside Greg Stretzloff. And then running at your top 10 is Peter Coomer alongside Charlie Farrer. It's Peter Sigourney starting this race in 11th. David T. Glenn will start in 12th. Looking right behind on row number 7, it's going to be Richard Woodruff alongside Landon Patmore, the standout star in the race at Zolder just 2 weeks ago. Gavin Orr will start this race in P15. Alongside him will be Mike Matson. That's Matt McCarriche starting this race in 17th. Alongside him will be Mark Foley. And then completing your top 20 here, Jeremy, will be Dean Chapman alongside Robert Neville.
Then you got J.R. Gregory alongside Lance Grimm in row 11, row 12, Dale Green, and David Snelling in that noticeable 9:35. Take a look at row 13, Scott Powers and Jeremy Hall run alongside each other. If you look at Jeremy Hall's car, it kind of almost reminds you of the Exxon paint scheme that was run so many years ago. And if you're trying to find Nemo, you'll be finding him with Devin Hopkins in row 14 alongside Rex Jariwala, Kevin Schultz, and Daniel Harmon out of the Chicago region. Round out your top 30. Then to finish off the field, Kason, Christian Braun, and last but not least, Chris Sherburne and Anthony James. Round out your 34 car field.
Yeah, and James not setting a time in that qualifying session, but still 34 cars strong to ring in this season finale on an absolute stunner of a racetrack. When you think of VIR, you think of sports car racing. That's what the track is most known for. IMSA runs here every single year. The SCCA National Championship runoffs were here a couple of years ago, along with a whole different batch of various club racing throughout the calendar year. When you think of sports car racing in the Mid-Atlantic, you really think of VIR.
You really do, and it's a shame that we've had its second iteration since about 2000. But you've got to thank Connie and the whole crew for reviving this classic racetrack and bringing it back to life. You know, they brought back to life before iRacing ever was even thought of. So it's great to see an old classic is run here. And if you think about it, Paul Newman said it best: "It's heaven on earth." This is VIR.
And this track is absolutely fantastic. Some call it America's Nürburgring, but a track that was a staple of auto racing back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Went the way the Dodo Bird got turned into a chicken farm. Then it was brought back from abandonment, and it's now been turned into one of the premier sports car racing venues here in the United States. And here, for the final time for the club class in Series 14 of the Porsche Club of America Sim Racing Series, we have got a stacked grid of racers, one driver down in pit lane, but that doesn't distract from a full grid of competitors about to grab that green flag in a couple of moments' time, waiting for it to fly with that pace car down pit lane. The field in the hands of Jake Gerbino for the first time this season. The green flag is out. The drivers are on their way, and we're racing here for the season finale at VIR. Drivers already fanning out, nearly going 3 wide. Look at the move from Kellen Heimbecker. He's going for the dive. That's contact into the turn, and around they're going to stack them up hugely into the horseshoe.
4, 5, 6, 7 cars involved. J.R. Gregory is our car. Those in the pits. We're still wrecking from the back. Oh, you talk about some sort of disaster as Heimbecker involved in some early incidents. You've got Doran involved, Sherburne involved, and Gregory back on course. Hopkins falling back, Neville's falling back, but still, look at Gerbino already out near the front, taking Cowley with them. And this is going to be an even easier run to the championship if things stay the way they are. But Ron, you know as well as I do, in racing, you race to the finish. You don't race to the first incident.
Yeah, you don't race to the end of the first lap either, and that is oh so important for Rylan Cowley to keep in mind. Throughout this season, he's been a clean racer, but here at this race, he cannot rest comfortably. No drop rounds are allotted to be taken in the final race of the season, too, as we take a look at that incident hang down into the turn. I gotta say, Kellen Heimbecker, I don't think that move that he went for heading down into turn number 1 was entirely of his decision. He went for it and then looked like he was kind of pushed into it more and more and more and more. He may have been the one to walk to that cliff face, but he wasn't the one that caused himself to jump off. I think there's a push there. As a driver going off the track, heading down into the turn. That's Peter Coomer with an off-track moment into the roller coaster.
Yeah, you don't want to go off there. And of course, you've been in as many drivers' meetings as I have, obviously, as a Coomer will have to take a tow into the pits if he cannot get that going, because he does have the meatball flag. But as I was saying, you've been in as many drivers' meetings as I have. I've been in pro drivers' meetings, I've been in amateur drivers' meetings, and the message is always the same. You got to get through corner 1 if you want to win the race. That looks like a disconnect that happened. Oh, hard hit into the wall. So something happened there with Coomer where the steering wheel just didn't want to turn.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was a hardware failure or maybe potentially a failure with his monitor or VR headset. No matter what the deal may be, Peter Coomer out of this race before before he can really settle into the groove as we run on board with that 33 car. Let's listen in. Still looking fine. Still looking like there's some steering movement there. I think his monitor went blank. I've had that happen before in my own iRacing adventures, and there's no more hopeless feeling to have.
Well, I know as recently a couple of these updates too have really affected the VR headset. So, you know, it could be the monitor, could be the VR headset. We'll see what happens. We're watching Sigourney hold off Gibson and Woodruff around through the snake and headed towards South Bend. And this is going to be an interesting battle between these three as they work their way around Oak Tree. Once again, we're taking a look at Christian Braun. What happens here? And he takes the Spike Halloween livery right through the grass. It's just a lot of tricks, no treats.
Yeah, I think that was a rather haunting moment as well as he headed his way out of turn number one. Very lucky to keep that car going in somewhat of a straight line, albeit with tires that have probably been turned into rectangles. As here we go side by side for third, and that's a move from John Gibson to jump his way up into that spot. Gibson holding on to third in this race, wants to hold on to a good spot in the championship. As much as I was just going to say he wants to hold on to third, he may be able to jump his way into second. As much as it was Kalen Einbecker, the only driver who'd be able to challenge Cowley. That moment hang down to turn number one, it looks like Gibson may be able to jump in front of Heimbecker before Heimbecker can jump in front of Cowley.
Yeah, that incident heading into the horseshoe really hurt Heimbecker's chances of being the vice champion. So Gibson going to try and do what he can, keep that nose clean. As you take a look at the points, yeah, Gibson up 300 points for where he's at right now. So he really has to make sure that A, Heimbecker does not gain any more positions than he already has, or B, just stays out of trouble. As we all know, sometimes with these spec cars, drivers are just going to make any sort of opportunity they can to pass. You've got Woodruff now holding off Dean Chapman in the 610, and that's a battle for fifth place. So a four-car battle for third with Gibson leading that train, heading through the snake and into the S's for the third time today. But this is going to be an interesting battle, I think, throughout the race. As you know, Gerbino trying to hold off Cowley just a little bit, but the bottom step of the podium, that battle's going to be raging on for quite some time.
Yeah, I think throughout this race is going to be the battle to keep our eyes on. John Gibson wants to hold on to that spot. A P2 in the championship would be fantastic for him. Peter Sigourney, meanwhile, I think wants to end the season off on a high note. Everybody does. One thing that these racers will have to keep in mind is because that we are at the end of the season, that even though we will be restarting the PCA Sim Racing Championship with Series 15 coming up in the not too distant future here on RaceSpot, there is still a little bit of a break, and I'm sure, Jeremy, you've seen many such cases like this. Drivers always want to enter the offseason on a high note. Sometimes it can end in tears as we take a look at the Heimbecker moment, heading down into turn number one, contact with himself, and I believe that was Mark Doran that he tapped heading off into turn number one. And it was a long shot for him to try and contend for the championship, but unfortunately for the driver of the number 14 car, he's going to have to hope for some lightning strikes here soon.
Yeah, and Chapman into the pits. He's falling back. I'm like, what's going on? I saw he's in the pits. But, I'll admit, I spent most of my day watching, the sim racing stewards on Reddit. And, did I do something wrong here? That was just a classic. You know what? I see a hole. Oh, no, the hole is closing up on him. But, take a look now as Heimbecker has solidly worked his way back up into second. So Gibson needs to try and catch up to Cowley, or has something wrong happen to the front two in order to try and stave off any attack that Kellen Heimbecker has on this championship, because it was at least a 240-point gap between the two. Well, now it's tied, but Heimbecker has that advantage because of better finishes he has over Gibson. So right now the ball's in Heimbecker's court.
Yeah, and as much as we kind of played it off that Heimbecker was a little bit hopeless in this race, I think he's hopeless in terms of trying to contend for the championship win here this season. However, in the fight for a second, the ball is most certainly in his court, because you look at John Gibson trying to jump in front of Kellen Heimbecker. He's at 300 points. He's running in third. He can't really grow too much. He can't really move up any more spots. Not only is there a big gap between himself and this two-car battle we have on screen right now between Brian Cowley and Jake Gerbino, you look at where Kellen Heimbecker is. he's well farther back. He has a lot of room to try and make up some spots, make up some points, and that's what's going to come into when it comes to that battle for P2 and P3 here in these season points. In the meantime, though, this battle between P1 and P2 really starting to get dicey. Ryan Cowley has not allowed Jake Gerbino to get away. Frankly, he's been, I can't even say within arm's reach, he's been within a finger's reach throughout most of this race. Jake Gerbino has been feeling the pressure from Ryan Cowley ever since the drop of the green.
Yeah, he really has, and we'll see how Gerbino can handle that pressure. We know how good Ryan Cowley is, especially when he's out in front. He senses blood in the water, but does Gerbino keep it in one piece? Of course, they are opening up a 7-second gap from second all the way back to third, and Gibson's trying to hold off 3 drivers of his own. Looks like might even be a 4th one as Kevin Hoare has also come out to play. But man, this is such a great battle. Here's why Kevin Schultz has got to see the pits, and once again just straight off.
Oh, it's Heimbecker.
He collects Heimbecker. That's why Heimbecker has fallen off all the way to the back. That is, tell you what, yeah, one was his problem, but the other one was just pure bad luck. Let's see what happens. And oh, that was close.
And that could have been so much worse for Kalen Heimbecker. It's not great, but, you know, it could have been even more disastrous than it already was. In the meantime, though, looking at Ryan Cowley, maybe I thought he was going to go for a move. No, just a simple game of bump drafting that those two decide to play as they head their way down the massively long back straightaway here at VIR. I was wondering what happened to Heimbecker, because not only did Gibson jump his way up into second in the points, Heimbecker at one point was holding on to about 40 points gained, I believe it was. That's now dipped down to 9. There's got to be some major damage on that race car. I don't think it's race-ending damage, but certainly championship contention damage that's going to take him out of it for sure. Slotted down at 31st at the present moment. So as Ryan Cowley tries to apply some pressure to Jake Gerbino for that race lead, I think his points lead is all but assured.
No, it really is, and that's not a surprise. We'll see if Cowley can get around as Pat Moore slow as well, losing several spots. But yeah, Cowley, I think as long as he can get around Gerbino, but let's watch his slow-mo replay. Just holy cow. Oh, that is a
falling anvil.
That is, yeah. You know, that could have been so much worse. You know, it's almost like Heimbecker's singing, What have I done to deserve this? You think the Pet Shop Boys were doing a post-race concert here?
You know, I will say, and this is honest, one thing that I always say on broadcast is it doesn't matter where the falling anvil comes from, whether it comes from yourself or it comes from somebody else. Doesn't matter where that falling anvil originates from, you're still going to be the one with a headache if it strikes you right in the head. That is such a shame for him. Was running strong throughout this season, broke through with the win last time at Zolder, but things just going wrong pretty much as soon as the race got underway. At this point, Kellen Heimbecker, really the fight has shifted from an outside chance to win the championship to what looks like a pretty tough battle to try and jump in front of John Gibson. The ball's still very much so in Kellen Heimbecker's court, but it's still going to be a very tough ask for that racer to try and jump their way back up into second in the points.
Our producer Romero is doing some illegal betting, saying that all his money was wasted on Kellen. So I'm sure you're going to get a invoice in the mail, Kellen, for that one. Saw another black flag, and that was actually a solid black for Mark Doran, as he already gets the ire of the race officials early on. So we'll see when he decides to answer that. He has only a couple laps to do so, as now that gap between Gerbino and Cowley has opened up a little bit. 0.7 of a second separate the two of them, as they have a lap car behind them as Doran comes into the pits. And that's going to be Kevin Schultz, our car that's one lap down, number 29. Still got a ways to go to get to Dean Chapman, but now the race is starting to settle in. This is about the point where we start to see drivers really get into a groove, and not surprising that it happened this late. We saw actually more action than I thought we would see.
And I think you brought up a good point in terms of these racers wanting to settle into a groove and go with the motions, for lack of a better term, here at VIR. This is a track that can put you on your butt rather quickly. You look at the runoff area, it's not like a Formula One circuit where you've got asphalt shoulders all over the place. This track, it doesn't have gravel traps, it's just got very, very wide areas of grass. Track feels similar in an odd sense to another classic American sports car track, that being a Lime Rock, in the sense that the runoff area is primarily grass, and it feels like it's built to highway standards in the sense that the runoff area is just a grass hill that slopes away from the track. So take turn one as a good example. If you overshoot your braking marker heading down into the horseshoe to start off the lap, which is very easy to do, I've done that, I've seen many a racer do that. The runoff area is expansive, and it also feels like you're driving off of a bridge. It is so steep when you head your way off there that it feels like it takes forever for you to actually get back on the road.
Yeah, it really does. And a little bit of a tap there, Snelling. A little bit of synchronized spinning there as a couple cars go off indeed in sympathy. That's Robert Neville, who decided to just go straight off into the grass. Rather take the incident points than take the race-ending damage. Smart move there as we are watching Peter Sigourney in the 222. Heimbecker just cannot get out of his own way. It's like he's got two left feet. A little bit of contact there. And yeah, I'll say this, the rabbit's foot definitely is not in his car right now as what can you say?
And as he was battling with that red car, the red mist has firmly descended on Kellen Heimbecker's race. It's not been going well for him at all. Although I will say the gap has only gone down to 20 points between John Gibson and Kellen Heimbecker as we leave this race, as there was a moment of Mike Gibson contact being made as they headed their way off through turn number one. Something that we've talked about a lot as of recent here in the PCA world, whether it be the wet weather action at Aragon or the nighttime action at Zolder. I think we have to bring it up once again. Incident points may come into the fold based off the drama we've seen thus far.
Yeah, and that red car was the 935 of David Snelling. Battle for ninth heats up as Strutzloff goes side by side with Kersey through the roller coaster, moves Strutzloff into ninth for the time being, but that's going to give Kersey a chance to close in and maybe make a move through the horseshoe. But Kersey losing some time there as you see that rear bumper. One of many that we've seen that have been crumpled throughout this quarter part of the race. And Kersey is going to come right into the pits and answer the call for the first pit.
Yeah, so this is a very, very, very early call to come down pit lane, but a reverse strategy could work in this race. We'll have to see what that Orange Coast region driver can do in that number 78 machine. A rather striking paint scheme on it. I like the kind of copperish orange on that machine. The damage going to be repaired out and away. Not a lot of time down pit lane, or at least down in the pit stall, at the very least 11.7 seconds in the pit stall itself. Very long trip down in pit lane, it must be said here, Jeremy. And if you make any sort of mistake down there, it is going to be agonizing.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to make a mistake in the pits because a tenth of a second could lead to a half or more out there on the circuit. And it is a long pit road as well, so you have to think about the delta. We saw Kersey out there. It's about a 23-second delta from end to end. So that's going to really come into play when you decide. Mike Matson in the 3 making his way around the circuit, and we see Foley and Sigourney battling side by side for that fifth spot. And not too far away, James Martin licking his chops. Should either of these two mess up, of course, he might try and go 3 wide, and he's going to think better of it. Heading through the roller coaster, still side by side. You want that grip there. Oh, man, Sigourney trying to make it work high, wide, and handsome. Almost does, and indeed, he and Foley are just going to be dancing partners into Hog Pen.
And dancing into the hog pen sounds like something you'd only hear on a farm. That, or it's here at VIR with the side-by-side racing still going on as they head their way down the start-finish straightaway. They finally single file at Mark Foley, losing on that spot to Peter Sigourney, but the battle is still far from over as he goes for the dive, heading down to turn number 1, not able to get enough alongside, heading off in through the braking zone. So Mark Foley going to hold on to that P6 spot for now. These drivers do have to worry if they battle too hard. car, the likes of James Martin and Kevin Orr in that two-car battle right there in the back of shot. They would be there to close up that gap in the blink of an eye, maybe 1.2 seconds, but if drivers go side by side for too long, it'll basically act like they're dragging anchors through asphalt.
Kevin Schultz with a black flag himself, and yeah, you don't want to be doing that whatsoever, especially in this part of the circuit. While the backstretch is quick, it is, but you don't want to screw up heading through the snake and into the S's, because it's a high commitment, high speed section of course, where if you get one wheel wrong, it could be your race over. Chris Sherbert, I did see him falling through the order. Let's see what happens. And just a little bit of a tap there and contact, and lots of other drivers involved in that as well. We saw one of the drivers involved early on as well with more of an issue, and Robert Neville deciding to put on air lead there in the runoff.
Yeah, the landscaping crews here at VIR are not going to be happy at all. Yet again, turn 14 strikes, as in the meantime, we got the side-by-side battling going on with Peter Sigourney and Mark Foley in the bottom right-hand side of your screen. Kevin Schultz with the moment. That's a spin heading out of Oak Tree. Very easy section of racetrack to lose it, with Jeremy Hall now picking up a black flag in the 060 car. Peter Sigourney still holding on to that top 5 spot for now, but Mark Foley is right there to pounce. Look at that gap. Go down, go down, go down. He's looking for the move on the outside. He dives down to the inside. Switchback, cut back into one. Sigourney overshoots it, though. He's going to go off the track. He hops the berm, and Mark Foley going to hop up into P5.
So Peter Krumer checking in, saying he made it through the first corner quote-unquote incident up the third, and his VR disconnected near the end of lap 1. So, like we said, it was either a monitor or a VR issue, and I guess that means that we announcers were actually right for once. I'm kind of surprised.
You know, in my actually go off the other logic that I said a little bit earlier on, off the 421 broadcasts that I've done thus far this year, I think I've been correct about 3 times. So that is the third here tonight. I'm very happy about that. I'm going to actually clip that prediction, comment, suggestion, correct idea that I had in my head. I'm going to have that on a sort of demo reel that is going to be cherished within my heart as one of only a few times that I actually know wheel. It's such a shame, though. You know, in iRacing, you don't have to worry about mechanical failures. You can blow up your motor, but it's not just going to randomly pop on you for no obvious reason. In iRacing, though, you can have those technical gaffes go on, whether it be hardware failure surrounding your wheel, your pedals, your shifter, whatever the case may be. I've seen some racers just not have their stuff mapped out properly, and sometimes it can come back to bite them where the sun doesn't shine. But now about a third of the way through this race with Jake Gerbino at the front. Want to once again thank Princess Cruises for being the 2025 PCA title sponsor. As the official cruise vacation partner of Series 14, they provide exclusive offers including world-leading itineraries across a fleet of 17 elegant ships sailing to more than 330 global destinations. Reach out to the PCA concierge team to book your next adventure today by calling 833-679-2188. So if the side-by-side battling maybe gonna flare up here between Jake Gerbino and Ryan Cowley, I commend Cowley in that number 18 car, Jeremy, because even though he hasn't gone for the lunge yet, he's kept Jake Gerbino very honest throughout this race.
And Cowley does not need to make any unnecessary risks. So I'm not surprised that Cowley's sitting back there. He's waiting. He's waiting for that opportunity, trying to see if he can get Gerbino on his back foot. We're seeing throughout this race that is just not possible right now. Of course, now they say that, he's probably going to go full on send into the roller coaster and it's going to be race over. But no, I hope that doesn't happen, as Gerbino's trying to break the draft of Ryan Cowley going into roller coaster. And that is a smart veteran move right there, to make sure that the draft does not catch up, because Cowley's well within the draft zone as Devin Hopkins now receives a black flag. And through the roller coaster they come. They're trying to put their hands up, but they got to get the hands on the wheel so they can make it around. But nonetheless, Cowley trying to make an honest show out of Gerbino. Now it's a matter of when are they going to pit? Will they pit together? Will they pit separately? Only time will tell as Gerbino comes by to complete yet another lap up at the front.
And so a lot of time left to go in this race for these drivers. No need to get lost up in the smoke and the drama in the early stages, because you got to be having your eyes focused on the prize at the end of the night. For Ryan Cowley, it's actually focused on two. Not only is he on track to win this championship here in the club class, even if he doesn't grab another win here tonight, which would be his 5th thus far this season, it would still be a mighty season that Ryan Cowley has put together. 2 poles up to this point, 4 wins. He's been super duper consistent as well. That's a reason why he holds on to such a comfortable margin. Frankly, what Kellen Heimbecker needs is a miracle for himself and disaster to strike for Ryan Cowley, which I don't think would happen for another reason. Ryan Cowley, the other kind of crown that he is facing at the moment, is trying to race for that Clean Driver Award here in the PCA. They award cleanness, and entering this week of championship action here in the PCA world, Joshua Jepson actually holding on to the top clean driver spot in the sport category. Only 8 incident points throughout the entirety of the season. Ryan Cowley only 2 back with 10 heading off into the season finale. Kevin Orr, in the meantime, though, going to pick up a couple of incident points already damaged on that race car as he goes off the track once again, this time through 1.
I love a car that has coffee beans on it. That's just something cool. But yeah, you definitely want to try and limit the incident points you have, because not only does that affect the series, but it could also affect your I rating. All right, since we've got things spread out, Ramiro, remember how I told you I want to take a look at the camera over there at turn? I'm gonna say that's probably turn 7 with the marshals and the camera. If we can punch that up real quick, I want it's part of my story here. So I used to be a series director, or sorry, series media director for a development series that involved Porsches. It was one of the first Cayman series in the world. Our last, was our last race this season? It was one of our last races of the season, was the last non-American Le Mans series endurance races, and it was here, if you can remember that, all those years ago. As we have one of the drivers going into the pits, that's Dale Green in the 250 in the Vancouver Island region. So my job was to be obviously the series liaison between the media and my series, you know, announce our series events with the late great Jim Martin. Honestly, it was a thrill. Then we go to the final ALMS race of the season. Of course, as you know, at that time, it was P2, Prototype Challenge, GT, and GT Challenge. Who remembers how much of a Spec Miata-like race the GT Challenge was? All the time. Even when I was announcing ALMS, it was always, you know, a draft. You had 3-4 cars find each other. Well, a couple of those cars found each other in turn 7. They hit the wall there at that corner station where the camera was. Cameraman bailed, but the camera found the GTC car on top of the tire barriers. I didn't think anything of it as Chad Cason gets a mechanical black for some repairs needed. I didn't think of anything of it until the next day when my mom messaged me. So, you're not going to tell me what happened at the racetrack? What do you mean? You bailing from that car that ended up on top of the tire barriers? Mom, when have I ever manned a camera? And I would have told you that. Turns out that crash was on Good Morning America and every morning show program, frightening one announcer's mom, thinking that he decided to play cameraman when he would never play cameraman. I play chicken with race cars sometimes as a quarter marshal, never as a cameraman. So remember, kids, tell your parents when you're going to be trackside and at a hot racetrack.
Oh gosh, I think I remember seeing that clip many moons ago. I think I remember seeing that somewhere online. The neurons are firing in my brain remembering that. That is a fantastic story. I'll share another bit of motherly concern here. Sorry, I wanted to add on to that story real quick.
I do, because here's the thing. The best part was I was in line at the concession stand off of the NASCAR bend, and I remember hearing, oh, and I turn around, I go, oh, that's not a good place for a Porsche to be. Yeah, I'll take a pulled pork sandwich, please. No barbecue sauce.
Oh boy, that is That is a racer in its entirety. As oh, I thought Ryan Callie was maybe gonna go for a move, probably just trying to get some clean air into his radiator. I'll share my own little bit of motherly concern. Unfortunately, I lost my mother when I was a little bit younger. I was 7 when she unfortunately passed, so I'd never really had too many racing adventures with her. However, as we see Chad Casey on with a moment heading off through the middle sector of the lap, that was heading off through the snake section that he hits the wall. Very easy section of the racetrack to lose it. Early on in my racing adventures, when my dad got me this small little razor cart, I'm gonna hold off on that story, as Ryan Callie now, for the first time in this race, trying to challenge Jake Turbino. Thought about it on the outside, heading off through turn number 1, but backed out of it. I think Ryan Callie just assigned to give himself a little bit of excitement at this point in this race, as it has slipped into a bit of a groove for many of the racers all throughout the field. But no, just wrap up on that story. My dad got me this small little Razor electric go-kart, the small little red one, like no power from the electric motor, but it was a quick race car as far as my 6-year-old brain was concerned. Got it for me as a Christmas gift. Actually, I think, was I 7 at the time? No, I was 6. I had just turned 6. This was late 2010. This was Christmas of that year. So I was up in the schoolyard. I was up in my elementary schoolyard driving this, and the video's out there. I should probably share it at some point to everybody here that I do broadcast with, so you can hear a prepubescent me scream while driving an electric go-kart around a schoolyard. But as that was going on, my mother was on the backyard porch, because there's literally only a hill that separates the back of my house and my old childhood schoolyard. So she was there drinking a tea or whatever, coffee, whatever the case may be, hearing me scream, and she was frightened to death. She used to work for, well, it's not an ambulance unit here in the city of Philadelphia. It's Philadelphia Fire Rescue. So she was always worried that I was going to end up being in a live leak video when I was driving that cart, which I didn't. I didn't injure myself until after until after we lost her. So I guess thankfully I was never around to get smacked for injuring myself behind the wheel. I'm sure my dad got smacked after getting that gift he had with a nice little red bow. That was the gift that started it all. He got that for me as a 6-year-old, and now I am 20, knocking on the door of 21, making fart jokes on the internet, commentating on race cars. Ryan Lee Callie and Jake Turbino still battle for that top spot, as pandemonium breaking out all throughout the field, with drivers coming down pit lane. Didn't really touch on that as I was sharing that story, but a lot of racers breaking away into the pits, maybe down to incidents that they've already had, but also down to the fact that he may be able to throw a strategy curveball with the drama we've seen thus far.
Yeah, we're watching Steve Comats. I love those direct drive wheels. I got to try one at the Sim Gaming Expo earlier this year. And if you get a chance, honestly, that's going to be happening next year at the Schaumburg Convention Center. Free plug. If you have a chance to go, highly recommend it. If you've never been to one of those. But, you know, you get to try so many cool things. And if you want to try a direct drive wheel, that's the time to do it. And you've seen a lot of these drivers go into those direct drive wheels. As, you know, we talked about the backstretch also. You saw Steve kind of like itch his nose there. You have time to do that if you don't have a helmet on. And you have time to eat a sandwich, take a drink. It's a long, I think, if I remember correctly, that is the longest straightaway in all of sports car racing. Closest one would be out at Road America.
Yeah, and talk about another fantastic track, which, funnily enough, actually replaced VIR as a home of the SCCA National Championship runoffs a couple of years ago. So
yep.
A nice little bit of circularity with that as well. One day I need to make the venture out for the runoffs, considering I've been a member of the SCCA for coming up to my 10th year. In April of 2026, Ryan Callie's still trying to... I don't think he's really testing the waters too much here. I think this is pretty much just a matter of trying to give himself some entertainment, but he just gave himself the shock of a lifetime heading out of 1. He had a huge sideways snap and nearly set it off the track.
Yeah, that wouldn't have been championship over. Would have been lead race over. But he's got plenty of gap between he and John Gibson. So we'll probably see a replay of that. But he's run about the same lap times as Gerbino, maybe a couple tenths of a second faster. Won't be running that this next time by. But onto the runoffs. That is easily one of my top 5 favorite races of all time. I need to figure out how the heck to get back there as this race. Now I think Cowley probably going to take a little bit of time, cool off those tires, and maybe even think about going into the pits here. We're past halfway in this race. Let's take a look at this replay. Coming through turn number 2. You say, you know, I like to say sometimes that back end wants to see what the front end's looking at, but may have caught that replay just a little bit too late. But either way, that's good news for Gerbino because he doesn't have to be looking in his mirrors too much.
Yeah, that's a nice little mental relief just to be able to say, you know what, I'm feeling a little bit better, not feeling the pressure. Still got to worry about that a little bit later on because we're still far from the end of this season finale race here for the club class competition. To all of you tuning into this broadcast, we hope you are enjoying this show because we're certainly enjoying calling the race, which has proved to be a bit of a tough one, a bit of a tough cookie to crack for many racers all throughout this field. Anthony James with a huge moment heading off into turn number 1, gets it looped around before the tire bundles. That is a huge runoff area on the outside turn number 1. So I wonder, maybe another hardware failure potentially, that or he just overcooked it massively heading off into the braking zone. The brakes are huge on these race cars, so very easy to lock it up, but even then, that's probably the farthest I've seen a car go off into turn number 1 at VIR in quite some time.
Yeah, the last time I seen anyone go off that deeper was watching a Moto America race, and there was a superbike rider that just literally, that last bend just before you get to the start finish line, just went straight off and almost in North Carolina. And it's possible to do, but yeah, it's very hard with all the grass that's here. It is hard if there's a big runoff. It's hard to hit something. Obviously, you know, we've seen cars hit the wall at you know, coming out of Oak Tree. I actually had my best friend used to race in Pro Mazda. He came off at the south end in that runoff there in driver's right, lost it and had a massive moment in the driver's left wall there.
I'm thinking through. There are some people that I have interacted with that have raced at VIR, primarily in the SCCA ranks. Here's a funny little story that I do occasionally bring up on the air from time to time, which I mainly just bring it up to validate my own racing career since I've been at the kart now for coming up to 3 years. Sold my first ever kart to a current Porsche racer in the IMSA Michelin pilot ranks by the name of Morgan Burkhardt. He was him and his family were members of the DC region of the SCCA, and my first kart became his first kart, and that first owner of that kart was actually Austin Green, who's made a bit of a name for himself, of course, in NASCAR ranks, following the steps of his father, David Green, who ran in the at that time it was a NASCAR Busch Series, then went on to be Nationwide and then Xfinity, and now the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. But I remember Morgan in his first time racing at the SCCA National Championship runoffs. I think he broke his axle heading out of Oak Tree, had to pull over, which was such a shame. He had a very good shot at victory in that race, but things just didn't materialize, which is a shame. Although he has gone on to do some fantastic things behind the wheel of a sports car, he has got more talent in one of his fingers, and I think I have in my entire body, which is the reason why I swapped out the steering wheel for a microphone and did that many moons ago. Look at Peter Sigourney holding on to that P8 spot. Things have broken up a little bit. It was a pretty big train of drivers, but now I think the battling is still far from over. Sigourney this time having to worry about Kevin Orr instead of Mark Foley.
Well, of course, now we're starting to see what I mentioned, where this is going to be a game of inches. If you can inch your way up to the front, you will be able to battle because everybody is strung out. We only have 20 on the lead lap, and Gerbino's opened up a 1.7 second gap between he and your points leader, Ryan Cowley. as, the battle for second of the championship blown wide open. If Heimbucher can keep it where he's at, of course, I don't think he has pitted yet. He is not. He's the last car to pit. Mohamed Karsai is the first car to pit. He sits in 17th. So your top 16 cars still need to pit. We'll see what happens after Heimbucher comes into the pits, how far he's going to fall down. Remember, he was involved in that early race incident going into the horseshoe, and once again, he decides that he needs to cut some grass and show that autocross is racing. But last time I checked, you really don't do autocross on the grass.
See, I appreciate that as a former autocrosser myself, but I don't think he appreciates going off the track as often as he has, because you get to the point, I mentioned this a bit earlier on in this broadcast, I think there's a lot of truth said in just many of these racers who have been involved in the drama, especially that big pileup heading off through turn number 1 right at the drop of the green. They're going to have to consider the possibility of running into some trouble with the incident points. Now, I'll be able to get the other numbers up for you in just a couple of moments' time in terms of the incident point limits and everything here in the PCA world. We have seen some racers get caught out by that throughout this season. Saw a lot of it in the other racing action at Zolder. I misspoke a bit earlier on in this broadcast. I do apologize for that. It's been 3 weeks since the last round of the championship at Zolder, but saw many a racer run into trouble with the other disqualifications and everything of the sorts. 25x is the maximum incident points that he can have here in this race, and then afterwards you're going to run into some trouble. So these competitors really have to keep that number in mind. May seem like a lot, 25x, but in a 1 hour long race, and these somewhat tricky to manage at some points in time Porsche Challenge cars with a track that can be very tricky as well. That 25x can disappear in the blink of an eye.
It really can, because you got to stop and figure contact with somebody else. The wall usually cops you about what, four incident points. So you do that multiple times. It depends on the severity of the hit, obviously, but you do that so many times, and it's going to be, you're going to reach that 25x early on. I can remember there was a race. It wasn't this series, but had a 20x incident limit. Somebody hit it within 2 laps, so it's very easy to do.
And, you know, our producer, Mr. Ramiro Augustines, is there. So the production truck has contact made between Landon Patmore and Kevin Orr down to turn number 1, and a bad rejoin from Patmore. Going to add an extra contact into the midst of all of that. Turn 1 strikes again. But I was going to mention a iRacing special event that can be a little bit tricky on the incident points. The FF1600 Festival at Brands Hatch, the Formula Ford Festival with those cars. I saw a driver manage to pick up a disqualification and I think it was actually a penalty for 17x in about 8 minutes into a Brands Hatch race, which was almost impressive, as we saw that moment with Kevin Orr and Landon Patmore heading down into turn number 1. Unfortunate bit of incidental contact. I think the extra bit of contact as Patmore tried to get it turned back around, that could have done without. I wonder if race control may have a look at that for a potential unsafe rejoin penalty. Patmore currently holding on to the final spot inside the top 10 in that number 10 car, as Rex Jarrawala, the car right behind in that number 7 machine, looking to apply some pressure as we get towards the end of this race with the pit stops looming. Jake Turbino is still your race leader with a half a second gap to himself and Ryan Cowley. But once again, we would like to thank Princess Cruises for being the 2025 PCA title sponsor. As the official cruise vacation partner of Series 14, they provide exclusive offers, including world-leading itineraries across a fleet of 17 elegant ships sailing to more than 330 global destinations. Reach out to the PCA concierge team to book your next adventure today by calling 833-679-2188. We would once again like to thank Princess Cruises for sponsoring the action here in the Porsche Club of America Sim Racing Series. And we still got some action to talk about. Wondering if the battling up of the front will heat up. Wondering if those pit stops are going to shake up this field. And still keeping our eyes on that battle for second place in the season points.
And of course, during that read, you saw Kevin Orr have a black flag that he has to answer. So his battle within the top 10 will end. Or into the pits, Grim into the pits, and that's going to be for a scheduled pit stop. So we have had 14 cars who have not seen a pit stall yet as Kevin Orr comes back out for his pass through, and Kellen Heimbecker comes into the pits. So, Ron, what's going to be interesting is we're going to see how this plays out, how far down Heimbecker goes down, and then how long his pit stop's going to be.
Yeah, once again, kind of touching on the point that we raised a bit earlier on in this broadcast about the pit lane. Such a long trundle down in the pits that it can be a bit unnerving for the racers as well. You know, most pit lanes are obviously on the start-finish straightaway. That goes without saying. So you're used to being down in pit lane and just hearing the cars just buzz your actual doors off. See, I'm so used to calling open wheel racing that I have to add in metaphorical there more often than not. But these racers are going to just hear their competition whir off into the distance as they're trundling down pit lane at pit lane speed limits. Going to be a bit unnerving, can cause some mistakes to brew up. These competitors have to keep that in mind. We've seen many a racer run into troubles, whether it be speeding on entry, speeding on exits, maybe just overshooting their pit stall, which can be done very easily here. There's a lot of stuff that plays at risk for these racers to turn their race completely on the opposite end. They may be looking good now, but those pit stops, they've got to execute.
Exactly, and one wrong move, one wrong tenth or two will cost so much more onto the circuit. Speaking of on the circuit, you see how close Cowley has gotten after his little misstep. 48-1, 48-2, that is what your top two are running last time by. And now lap traffic is going to come into play as Gerbino gingerly gets around Oak Tree, and lap traffic getting out of the way, getting that blue flag. That's the 379. That is the car. There's Caisson who had issues early on, and that's going to cost Cowley as well down the back straightaway once again. He's going to try and catch up. Next driver that is on there, Steve Komatz. Komatz, though, he's a very wise driver. Would not be surprised to see him get out of the way the earliest that he can, because he doesn't want to insert himself in this battle.
And one thing that I do want to give these racers in the Porsche Club of America a whole lot of credit for, they are sportsmen. They have a fantastic level of sportsmanship. They know how to treat their competition. The competition knows how to treat them, as the top two coming down the pit lane in unison. Jake Gerbino leading Ryan Cowley throughout all of this race, and they come in pit lane at the exact same time. John Gibson going to follow in suit. Richard Woodruff is going to stay out, so that'll give the race lead to the driver of the 934 car at the very least for one lap, as here you can see your top two all throughout this race. Down in pit lane, Ryan Cowley running in the draft throughout most of this race. I wonder if he's been able to do some fuel saving, may jump ahead. He's off the jacks. There goes Gerbino, and Ryan Cowley gonna jump out in front.
You mentioned that draft, and he did save some gas. He also saved some pit time as well. You take a look at their pit stops, 13, it was a whole second. Cowley with a whole second faster in the pit box over Gerbino, 13.4 to a 14.4.
That right there can make or break a race, and I was just thinking about that. As soon as they went down pit lane, I was like, you know what? We haven't talked about the fuel saving. I think Ryan Cowley may be able to jump in front. Sure enough, that's exactly what he did. It's not a huge gap, though. The gap is rather minuscule, and with some more drivers in front of them, got to worry about the lap traffic. There's really no spots that he can deal with lap traffic. Outside that back straightaway, that is good. There is only the least terrible in terms of catching up to lap traffic here, but there was a jump from Ryan Cowley. He's able to jump into what is the net lead of the race. Does it at the right time. He's been running in tow for oh so long, and it was that tow with the draft and the better fuel saving numbers that allowed him to have that quicker stop. It may not seem like a lot, and that gap may not be a lot, but a second save down in pit lane can be big.
Oh, it can be huge, and normally we think it's bigger than a half second. But however, these two drivers has just been going tooth and nail all race long. Cowley with the aggregate lead. So got the top five who need to come into the pits to answer that call. The leaders in Richard Woodruff, and so is Strutzeloff. Let's see if Foley, Sigourney, and Ferrer decide to go into the pits this time high. They are closing in, coming out of Hog Pen, and it looks like that, Foley will come in. Sigourney and Ferrer will stay out for the time being. Actually, no, they're going to come in as well. So now your race leaders, it is game on. The race is afoot for Cowley and Gerbino as they battle for the next 14 minus minutes.
And now here's the question for you here, Jeremy. This is, I want to put you in the shoes of these racers. Which one of these drivers would you rather be? Would you rather be Jake Gerbino, who's maybe feeling a bit more comfortable in terms of fuel to make it to the end of this race? Do you want to be him? At this point, there's not a lot for you to lose. You just want to go for all out glory, grab the pole a little bit earlier on, want to end this season off on a sweep of the event here at VIR. Would you want to be Jake Gerbino in the attacking spot with the advantage to say, you know what, I can go for all that glory? Or would you want to be Ryan Cowley, holding on to track advantage, track position advantage at the moment in front of Gerbino, but he's got not only a spot to defend, he's got championship win to defend and a clean driver award to try and defend as well. Which one of those two would you rather be if you had the choice?
I'd rather be Gerbino, honestly, because now I'm in the draft. I can make the moves that I want as Christian Braun just goes straight off. Poor Rexy, just poor Halloween Rexy, going through the grass just multiple times today. But you know what? Maybe that's what Rexy likes, because Rexy can snack on stuff. But anyway, back to the point. Yeah, I would rather be Gerbino, because now you know the places where Cowley is the weakest, because you saw where he was losing time in your mirror. You know where he's the fastest, so you can attack as well. You're the attacker. The race is in your hands. Gerbino always locked up the championship. Yeah, he's trying to get fastest lap of the race. He also is trying to get cleanest racer of the season. So really, the ball's in Gerbino's court. You've got to make sure that you get out front, but Cowley is one tough customer here in the Club Series.
Yeah, and he has proved that all season long. We mentioned this earlier on. I'll mention it once again. 2 pole positions may seem like a lot, but his 4 wins are even more impressive. He's been consistent throughout this season, too, even though he's scored a lion's share of the victories. Whenever he hasn't been winning, he's been doing pretty all right, and he's been keeping it clean as well. I think Ryan Cowley here in the PCA world has been one of the standout stars from this Series 14, and if he ends the season off on a high note with another W, that's just going to be a feather in his cap to end off what has been a fantastic 7-round season here in the Porsche Club of America. We started all off on a high note at Spa, went to Watkins Glen, Indianapolis, Laguna Seca, then took a trip off to Europe once again for the 2 races at Aragon and Zolder. Now rounding off this season and rounding off this year of Porsche Club of America action in the club class here at VIR. This has been a stunner of a race at the stunner that is this racetrack, and we still got 11 minutes to set ourselves up for a grandstand finish. These two have broken away and driven off into the sunset. The gap is about 12 seconds between themselves and John Gibson, holding on to the final podium spot. Contact is made. Gerbino loses it into the side of Cowley. That affects the clean driver's award, but that's going to give Cowley an advantage.
Oh, talk about mayhem going into roller coaster. And you have to wonder if the brakes locked up or something else happened with Gerbino. Look at how the rate of closing, if he just thought he had a chance but didn't. Contact sends both drivers off, and Cowley to a 1.3 second lead. Now we have 10 minutes left. There's still plenty of time if Gerbino can put the nose to the grindstone and hit perfect laps. He still can't catch up to Ryan Cowley.
Yeah, I wonder what the damage situation is on those cars, however, because that was a sizable thud. It wasn't disastrous. It could have very easily been disastrous, but it wasn't a complete catastrophe. I wonder how those cars are driving, how they're feeling. Probably some damage to the aero of Ryan Cowley, not going to help him out at all on the straightaways here, and flat out blast at VIR, which can be rather lengthy. Jake Gerbino, meanwhile, may have a slight tweak to the front suspension. If that's affecting him, he may be in for a world of hurts, but I think Gerbino may have gone off better at the end of the day. I'm looking at that race car. Doesn't look like there's anything major, and just based off the pace that Gerbino has been showing thus far in this lap, has been able to drag that gap down to nearly below a second once again. Still think the ball is very much so in Ryan Cowley's court, but I don't think Jake Gerbino got away from that incident with too significant of damage.
Yeah, I think hitting square on Cowley was the lifesaver there. Let's see what happens with these lap times. I'm taking a look at the sector times, and Jeremy Hall gets a meatball flag for repairs. And looking at this, Gerbino running a little bit faster, so Cowley may have received some sort of damage in this. Let's almost to the start finish line, but looking at the sector times for sector 1 and sector 2, Gerbino running just a little bit faster than Cowley across the line. 48.6, 48.2. Yeah, Gerbino doesn't have as much damage, I don't think.
Yeah, I think Gerbino, it's a little bit surprising considering that he was the car that came in barreling through, but I guess it's a matter of what would pick up more damage, a cinder block getting thrown at another cinder block, or the cinder block that just had a cinder block thrown at it. I guess that's the way that works here. Ryan Cowley feeling the burn, feeling the damage. That gap now down to about 3/4 of a second as they head their way off through the snake. About 8 minutes left to go in this race, so time is of the essence for these racers. Not a lot of opportunities left for Jake Gerbino to get the move done, and you do have to remember this: catching up is one thing, overtaking entirely different.
It really is, especially here at VIR. Half a second separates Cowley from Gerbino. And yeah, Cowley suffering some sort of damage as he is 0.3 of a second slower that last sector. The two drivers coming out of Oak Tree. Let's see what the gap is here in sector 2. Again, 0.3 of a second lap time in the sectors across the line of sector 2 heading down the back straightaway. They set themselves up for the roller coaster. 38.4, 38.3. So yeah, something's amiss with that number 18. We'll see how much longer that he can last. But as we mentioned, Gerbino is the driver who's chasing your points leader, Ryan Cowley, coming into Hogpen down the front straightaway. And Ron, I've got to say this: we thought that the race was over a couple laps ago. Oh no, it's still afoot.
Oh, it is far from over, and that contact was just a brief derailment. Look at that gap. It's pretty much exactly the same, if not maybe a little bit closer than it was not too long ago. But I think with that coming together as they headed their way into roller coaster, I think the momentum has shifted from Cowley's corner into Jake Gerbino's. Look at that gap. They nearly made contact as they had their way off through NASCAR Bend. That could have ended in tears, but Jake Gerbino knows that he's got the quick race car. He's got the advantage, and he is oh so close to the back of Ryan Cowley as they head their way off through the snake. Keep an eye on that back straightaway to maybe be the spot that Gerbino goes for the move. Will he go for it earlier though? Look at that gap closing up as they head their way into 8. He doesn't go for it side by side. Racing all through this section of the track can be a bit of a kamikaze mission. I think Jake Gerbino knows that. Wants to get this move done as cleanly and efficiently as he possibly can. Doesn't want a repeat of what happened down into roller coaster a bit earlier on. Ryling, oh no, he spins around into Oak Tree. Ryan Cowley goes for a spin. The 18 machine, as much as it may be the championship for him at the end of the night, it's not going to be the win.
Talk about luck for Gerbino as he saw Ryan Cowley into the grass there right around Oak Tree. And I was just going to mention, Cowley running 0.4 of a second slower than Sector 1. That is where Gerbino was able to catch up to him. And now that 4 or 5/10 of a second lead has turned into a 5.7 second deficit, and that's just a case of the back end wanting to see what the front end was looking at. But again, it could also be an ill-handling race car from that contact.
Yeah, gotta wonder if that played a role in it. That car, if it has a lot of damage, whether it be suspension, aerodynamic, or a mix of the two, it's not driving factory fresh at all. And you gotta wonder at this point, will there be another battle? If Ryan Cowley has a couple more spins, we could see John Gibson potentially get involved into this battle. He's not too far back, only about 3 seconds is the margin between those racers. John Gibson, if he can get that move done, I'm trying to look how it would work out in the fight between himself and Kellen Heimbecker for P2 in the championship points. I still think it would go the way of Kellen Heimbecker, but would be a lot closer if John Gibson would be able to jump his way up into second. That 4 minutes left to go in this race. I'd say probably about 3 to go at the moment. Make that 2.5. Coming to 2 to go this time by. But Ryan Cali, it was looking good for him after that pit stop, but the contact is made. Still looking good for him in the championship. Don't want to touch on this, however, the clean driver award that we've been keeping tabs on throughout this. A reminder, folks, he entered this race P2 of those racers, incident point-wise, throughout the entirety of the PCA throughout this Series 14. The only driver in front of him was Joshua Jepson, the sport class racer, who's only picked up 8 incident points throughout this season. With those moments that Ryan Cali has had in this race, that's probably going to take him down a couple of notches, and come time for that sport class broadcast in about 6 days time here on RaceSpot TV next Wednesday. That'll be on Wednesday the 10th here on RaceSpot TV for the season finale. Then we may see the crowning of a clean driver award, as Ryan Cali not going to have the opportunity to do that. That is a heartbreaking moment for him for many reasons. It's still going to be a good result in the championship, but I think he wants to end this season off on a slightly sweeter note than it may end off as.
And it's an uncharacteristic race for Cowley, in spite of him being in second place. You know, you got to take the good with the bad. You know, he's had a couple of incidents. One maybe of his own doing, the other not so much, but either way, what a heck of a season that the number 18 has put together all season long, as tries to, I believe we're gonna get the white flag this time by, but doesn't really push as hard as he has. He's got a decent gap up front, decent gap behind, so plenty of time, plenty of breathing space. Just get out there and run the laps that you can. And I say he's not pushing himself. He's at a 48.5 last time by, so still running one of the more faster laps of the race. Still has the fastest lap of the race with a 47.9 as well. But Ryan Cali, what could have been, should have been for today. Basically all for naught. He just goes down one spot on the podium, and really, Ron, as you know as well as I do, you make a mistake and you're usually 3, 4, 5, 6 pegs down. Cowley, he got lucky. He's still one place down from where he started.
And, you know, with the drama going on for Ryan Cali in this race, I think if there's one driver who's maybe kicking himself a bit, it's Kellen Heimbecker. Entered this race as the only driver who can challenge Ryan Cali for this season title. And even though things have gone even more south for him in this race than they have gone for Cali, he may be thinking what could have been had he been up towards the front of the field, turning that 2-car battle for the race win into a 3-car fight. Maybe things would have gone slightly different. He needed a bit of a miracle for himself, and misfortune to strike on Cali. Well, the misfortune has struck, but struck Heimbecker even worse. Now, with less than a minute and a half left to go from this season of PCA Club action, we jump to this battle to bring us to the final checkered flag of the season. Mark Foley running right in front of Peter Sigourney, who's right in front of Charlie Ferrer. You got Mehmet Karaçay right in tow. 4 cars trying to battle for the final 4 spots in the top 10. May not seem like a lot, but bragging rights at the end of this season will still hold their merits.
Yeah, they really will, and it's basically now bench racing at the end of the year. So Foley trying to hold off Sigourney, Ferrer, and Karaçay heading into the horseshoe. And Sigourney go deep into the brakes, not going to make anything happen on Foley, too far away. Only have a couple of more passing opportunities to make it happen. Turn 11 if you're lucky, but mostly going into the roller coaster. And this has been a race-long battle between these 4 drivers, but there is your leader. You talk about luck of the draw. He hasn't led every lap, but Rod, he's leading the most important laps coming down to the finish.
And Jake Gerbino started the night off right with the pole position. He became the 6th driver thus far this season to grab a pole, and that was impressive. Here in this race, however, he has coped with a lot, whether it be the contact off through this section of the racetrack, feeling the pressure from your presumptive champion, the contact made, the pressure he had to feel as he tried to reel him back in, but now it's going to come up the way of Jake Gerbino. This season that started with Mark Doran going from pole to checkered in the first race of the season at Spa is going to end with Jake Gerbino going from the pole to the checkered flag to win the season finale here at VIR. Jake Gerbino is your winner, but as he heads his way onto the start-finish straightaway, Ryan Cali in the number 18 car will be your Series 14 Porsche Club of America Sim Racing Club Class Champion. Something in the meantime has gone on with Peter Sigourney. He's dropped out of this race in that triple 2 machine. Not sure what in the world has happened to him over the past couple of moments. He's dropped outside the top 10 as Rex Jarawala has been able to get that spot, and Mehmet Karache has picked up a disqualification. Contact and bare knuckle fist gang broken out in that battle for some of the final spots inside the top 10. Karache out of it. Sigourney dropping down like a stone thrown into upon him. Rex Jarawala running into some trouble as well. So Jubilation felt at the front, Pandemonium felt behind.
Yeah, that was an interesting battle. Hopefully we'll get a replay on that because we obviously went away from it. It was a little bit straggled there, but still interesting to see the different issues there as they work their way around. But Jake Gerbino, what a race that he had, as they are unofficially Gerbino, your unofficial winner, Cowley and Gibson rounding out your podium. Of course, we'll see what kind of penalties there were, but yeah, what a fantastic race. And yeah, this was the shot I was looking for. See where that cameraman is there? That's where the GTC car ended up, on top of the barriers in front of that cameraman.
And, you know, I looked into it and I found the clip of it as well. I knew I had seen it before. I just had to verify with myself, because sometimes I feel like I am going insane, which, based off some of the stuff that comes out of my mouth, you can probably already tell that. But let's take a look at the race results for the final race of this club class season. That's Jake Gerbino grabbing the final checkered flag. He becomes the 4th driver to win a race this season, grabbing the final checkered flag with a 5.5-second gap nearly between himself and your champion of Ryan Cowley. John Gibson did everything that he could have done in this race, but just not enough to jump his way up into second. So P3 for him in this race, P3 in the season championship points. A fantastic run of things for that driver of the 911 machine. Greg Schletzloff will finish this race in 4th in front of Richard Woodruff in 5th. James Martin is classed in 6th in the 705 machine in front of Mark Foley in 7th. Charlie Ferrer is classed in 8th. Rex Jarawala jumps his way up into the top 10 in the dying breaths of this race. Peter Sigourney, meanwhile, holds on to the final spot inside the top 10. Scott Bowers finishes this race in 11th. Our RaceBot TV colleague J.R. Gregory will finish right behind him, P12. Dale Green is classed in 13th. Robert Neville in 14th. Dean Chapman finishes this race in P15 in front of Mike Matson in 16th. Chris Sherburne in 17th. Kevin Orr in P18. Landon Patmore in 19th, with David T. Glenn completing your top 20.
As you take a look at 21st, Kellen Heimbecker went from the bottom to there. So finishes off in 21st. Lance Grimm, Devin Hopkins, Daniel Harmon, and Mehmet Karache, who was disqualified, will finish off in 25th. Again, these results all unofficial, with Chad Casion, who had issues early on, 26th, Steve Komatz, 27th, and Christian Braun, who saw a lot of off-track incidents. So your last car on the lead lap in 28th. Then you go to Anthony James, Mark Doran, and rounding out your top 30. And finishing off your field, Kevin Schultz, Jeremy Hall, David Snelling, and Peter Coomer didn't make it a lap, as his VR decided that it didn't want to make anything more than a lap. He finishes off in 34th.
Unfortunate way for the season finale to go for a decent amount of the field, but while some drivers are feeling disappointment, others are feeling pure jubilation, and one of those drivers is your race winner, Jake Gerbino, who we will be dragging into the broadcast booth to have a chat with in just a couple of moments' time. It's been a fantastic way for this season to end for him, and let's have a chat with your race winner here at VIR tonight, Jake Gerbino, now joining us here on the broadcast booth. Jake, welcome in. Congratulations on the win at VIR. How about you talk us through what looked like a nutty race from the start through to the finish?
Yeah, it was fantastic. You know, Ryan was in my mirrors the whole time. We had really even pace, and he raced me clean. We had one little incident going into roller coaster towards the end, but outside of that, it was super clean and really enjoyable race.
Yeah, it looked like a super fun race. I want to ask you, though, about this season. Ending it on a high note with a victory must be feeling good heading off into the offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had a couple down races earlier in the season, unfortunately, but that's kind of the way it goes. Ryan's definitely been much more consistent than I have, so I've got to find that consistency to really hang with those guys throughout the duration of the series. So looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, and looking forward to maybe having you back in the broadcast booth come time for Series 15 that's starting up in just a couple of weeks' time. Jake, thank you so much for joining us here in the booth. Congratulations on the victory, and looking forward to hopefully seeing you back on the road for Series 15.
Really appreciate it. Looking forward to it. Just want to give a quick thanks to my coach, Eric Sutton, my wife, my dad, everybody who supports me in this. Really appreciate it, and it's a lot of fun. Thanks to you guys out in the booth, too.
It's our pleasure. It has been my pleasure throughout this season as well, Jake. Thank you for joining us in the booth. Well done on the win, and looking forward to seeing you out there for Series 15.
Thanks again, everyone.
And there was Jake Gerbino, your race winner here. And now, Jeremy, I will give you the honors of having a chat with our P2 finisher in this race and our champion for Series 14, that being Ryan Cowley.
And it's the second time I get to chat with, well, this time in second place, Ryan Cowley, provisionally second place, also your champion. First of all, congratulations, a fantastic showing. Jake said, you know, you were in some mirrors early on, and let's talk about, was it a case of trying to save your equipment for what would have been a pass later on in the race, or was it just that good of a race between you and Jake?
Yeah, it was a study session, right? I mean, we were pretty equally matched pace-wise. We were just trading tenths here and there, but I was really sitting back watching the corners because, you know, I knew at the end we were going to race, and so I was just taking notes where I had to be a little bit defensive and where I could attack, and, you know, I knew where he was strong and where I was weak, and I was going to use that at the end of the race here.
The contact. Let's get to the bad. The contact at the roller coaster. How did that affect your car near the end of the race?
Yeah, there's some discussion about that. My spotter said our pace fell off a little bit after that. I mean, I kind of evaluated the car. The wheel felt straight and everything, but it looks on our timesheet like we lost a little bit of pace. But I kind of thought no harm, no foul. You know, we both got back on. He yielded the spot.
And of course, Oak Tree had that spin. Was that a case of the earlier damage, or something else happened there?
Well, just maybe a little bit too much rear bias. I don't think that was as a result of the damage. Just came in a little bit too hot, a little bit too much rear brake, and you know that corner's just treacherous. It's a little off camber, and that's what's going to happen.
All right, let's talk about the good. Nonetheless, you had a pretty dominating season here in season 14. I know the race that I called at Laguna Seca, solo, mind you, you just flat out went out there and it was just game afoot. You were the rabbit, everybody else was the greyhound. But now you look towards season 15. What do you take from this season to kind of continue the domination in the next season?
Well, I think you just got to stick to the formula, right? And the formula is real simple. It's just a lot of work, a lot of practice, a lot of looking at telemetry, trying different things. And you know, as good as this group is, you're literally just, it's a race of the least amount of errors, but a race for tenths too. I mean, there's just, it's tight.
Well, congratulations. You are the champion for season 14 in the club class. Let's see what happens next year. Congratulations, bud.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you guys and Princess Cruise and Porsche Sim Racing. Thank you.
Ryan Cowley cruising his way to a title. You know, it's just one of those things, you know as well as I do, Ron, when it comes to a championship, sometimes it's difficult. And other times, in the case of Ryan Cowley, it's just an easy way to get there.
Yeah, I know from my own adventures in my karting days, I know what it's like to be on both sides of that, trying to contend for a championship when you're not in that top spot, and also being in a comfortable top spot and really just having to put together a good race to try and seal the deal. It was not a smooth one. It was probably not the result that he wanted to end this season off on, but still a pretty darn good drive to get up into second and applying the pressure throughout the race as well. I'm really looking forward to seeing what he may be able to do, potentially moving up into a different class come time for the start of Series 15. But we also have the opportunity to have a chat with our P3 finisher here tonight, that being John Gibson, who is now joining us here in the broadcast booth. John, welcome in. It's P3 provisionally for you here in this race. How about you talk us through the challenges that VIR had on offer?
Well, I really enjoyed the race. Had that checkup at first turn there. Had some challenges to get through there, lost some time to the leaders. And then from there, kind of was on pace with them, but couldn't really close the gap. But I really like VIR. It's one of my favorite tracks.
Yeah, and ending off this season on a good note. It's been a good season for you, very consistent, walking away with a P3 finish in this race. I believe provisionally a P3 finish in the championship too. I want to ask you about your final thoughts on how Series 14 went for you.
I really enjoyed it, and I want to thank the sponsor, Princess Cruises, also the steering committee, as well as my coach, Nicky Chan. He's helped me focus on some things to make me more consistent. And yeah, I really enjoyed the season, and hope that I can wrap up that championship podium. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoy this series.
And I gotta say, from my perspective in the broadcast booth, it's been an honor just from my side of things covering these races. You and the rest of the drivers in this series put on some brilliant racing week in and week out, and looking forward to seeing what Series 15 has in store. John, thank you for joining us. Well done on the P3, both in this race and in the championship, and looking forward to seeing what Series 15 has in store for you.
Me too, and thanks, guys. You guys do a great job broadcasting. Look forward to next series.
Oh, well, thank you very much. That right there was John Gibson, our P3 finisher here in this race. That just about wraps it up for this race, Jeremy. That was a darn good race to end this season off on a very, very high note.
You know what? It had everything. It had passes, and it had a lot of strategy within the race. It's something that it had something for everybody. And if it didn't have something for you, you're able to learn a little bit. This is what I love about VIR. It can be a very daunting, challenging race, and it could be a race in where, you know what, you have to dig and get gritty to get every position. I loved it, and this is one of my favorite racetracks for a reason.
Yeah, and VIR has put on some shows already in the championship finales here for Series 14 of the Porsche Club of America Sim Racing Championship. Once again, want to thank Princess Cruises for being the sponsor throughout 2025. Well, I'll let you all know that if you're in the mood for some more PCA action, not only do we have the 2 season finales for the challenge class as well as the sport class next week here on RaceSpot, we also have Series 15 coming up in just a couple of weeks, featuring some very popular cars and hopefully some very nice tracks as well. Looking forward to seeing what the future has in store here for what's been a fantastic season of action. My first time covering a whole season of Porsche Club of America action here on RaceSpot TV, and I must say it has been my distinct honor and privilege to be with you here on the call for both this race and the entirety of the season. Jeremy, thank you for joining me in the broadcast booth. On a personal note, I do want to say tomorrow will be my 1-year anniversary of my first ever PCA show, which was also my first ever broadcast here on RaceSpot. It's been one heck of a year. Love being a part of this organization. Love being able to call this fantastic Porsche Club of America action, and it has been a joy to be a part of these club broadcasts. Congratulations go out to your provisional champion of Ryan Cowley. What a season he put on. What a season all of these racers put on, and what a race they put on here tonight at VIR. But for myself, Ron Mullins, Jeremy Scott joining me in the commentary booth, and Ramiro Augustine Cineros working all the cameras and the graphics and the virtual production hauler, I say thank you all so very much for tuning into the action here on RaceSpot TV tonight, and we hope to see you all wherever it is in the not too distant future.